welcome to the other creatives. I'm here today with Symone, and I'm thinking I'm saying her last name correctly, Salvino.
That's correct.
Symone, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do currently?
Absolutely. So I am Symone Salvino. You said it perfectly. And I own Sincerely Simone, which is a social media marketing company. I also do some public relations as well. Sincerely Simone is really just about using sincerity and authenticity to create brand stories for businesses, small, medium to large size. And I love just getting to know my clients and creating a really robust strategy for them on social media.
That's great. So when you're talking about robustness, are you talking, I know you do photography, so you're talking about you can do the photos, you can content create and you can make the campaigns. And then I'm assuming you also provide your clients with analytics and data. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we do
Good. How did
content
you get
creation.
into this?
So I got into it um, through my background in public relations. So I went to school at Western Washington University and I received my communications degree there and just found my love of communication in that program and was lucky enough to land an internship at the Washington State Fair in Puyallup. And once I received that internship, I worked for the summer and was offered a full time job when I got out of school. So I worked at the Washington State Fair about 6.5 to 7 years in their public relations department. During that time, I was really a huge part of creating the social media strategy when social media really started to gain some traction for the fair. And so that's when I found that my passion was in content creation. I loved being part of that team. And so just pivoted and took that knowledge that I learned at the fair, started doing some side work, and decided that I actually wanted to do it full time for many different clients. And the fair is actually now a client of mine as well.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what would you say is different about public relations compared to just regular marketing?
So for me, public relations is always earned media coverage, so it's not paid. So what that meant for the fair is that we did a lot of media relationships that we worked with, community engagement, social media, of course, which now has a paid component with your ads. But I love the organic side of social media, and that's really where my focus has lied throughout the years. And so I just think of PR as relationship building and relationship maintaining.
Yeah, is that also in line with like reputation management? Because that's what I
Absolutely.
generally associate it with. I feel like
Yes.
a lot of people don't hear public relations, at least like I've lived in the Pacific Northwest 6.5 years. In 5.5 years, I've been a business owner here, either with another company or like with my ex-partner's company or mine. And we had to explain to people what reputation management was, and we had to explain to people what public relations was in comparison. So it just a term that people don't usually hear up in this direction very much. There's
Mhm.
not like a lot of full service agencies that offer public relations. In fact, you're only one of two that I know that offer public relations, and they're both female owned and ran. So,
You will find that PR has a tremendous amount of female leaders. It's really a place, I think it really comes down to that relationship building and maintaining. Like you said, it is about, a brand reputation. But
Mhm.
to me, I feel like even beneath that is the reputation that you create and the management of those relationships. And I think that women just have a really great eye for doing so. It's all about that emotional intelligence.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. As an anthropologist, that we
Mhm.
are definitely trained more for EI. And actually, a good friend of mine said to me a couple of years ago, I think it was last year, in fact, during the pandemic when we were both making face shields and masks. He said, the thing is that from a very young age, women are given emotional toys and men are given analytical toys, like boys versus girls. Even if they're not saying that they're one gender or the other, even if the family's trying to be careful about all that, they're still given those toys, and that's how the market is designed too. Like, I have a niece, and trying to find her STEM toys is awful, like
Yes.
almost impossible they're all like jewelry making, and like it's all about looks or it's all about relationships. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of, I have to buy, boy themed toys for her when she's 6, and so
Yeah,
the and she lives in the South, so like stereotypes are definitely a thing there. Half my family's from the
definitely.
South, and oh boy, howdy. It was not okay that I
Absolutely.
was a tomboy. Um, but yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because it is a good observation and it does often drive our career paths as females or
Mhm.
as like femme oriented people. And the thing is that that's actually kind of like you're lucky to where you got the experience before you started your own company and you have a degree in it and everything. And I think that a public relations degree or something like that is more apt, or a marketing degree is more apt to give you business classes. Like for marketing
Right.
degrees, it's required, but for like an art degree or a
Mhm.
theater degree or something, it's not required. And females are less encouraged to do it by a long shot. Like my roommate has a degree from FSU in costume design and set design, and they were never even like told to like do any kind of leadership classes, any kind of business classes, anything like that. And they're a full-time creative, and so that's interesting to hear like how people grow into having their business because of that. Now, on the flip side of things, one of my older friends who's she's a seamstress and designer now, she had a video company for a really long time, and she said that because she grew up in the 80s and that was like the birth of women in the workplace and there's a huge movement, that it was
Yeah.
actually the opposite, that she was encouraged to do like all the business, all the leadership and everything. And then as she got older, she would realize that she never really got to like embrace her feminine side. So now her
Yes.
brand and everything is about that, and like
That's
being more
amazing.
emotional, being more feminine. And so I thought that that was a really interesting perspective. But in general, even when I talk to people that have degrees from design universities or art universities that are really big, like and you know in New York or in LA, etc., they all say kind of the same thing. If there are women, that they're not encouraged to do any kind of leadership or business. And so coming from a marketing background, it's actually better. And actually, another observation is made by a group of mostly women. So there's some men in the group, but mostly women designers I know, was that when they see brands doing well on like Etsy or something or Instagram, most of the time that person does not have a background in, say, design. They have a background in marketing.
Absolutely.
So
I
we
would
need
say
people
it's
like you.
yes.
And
Yes,
like
it's
what this podcast is about is trying to like grow and encourage and give more exposure to the what I call the other creatives, which are the marginalized genders. And so because of that, it's really important for us to learn about like how you grew into this and what steps we can take and maybe what other classes we can take and things like the differences between public relations and marketing, because I need to like apply more of that myself. Like I'm pretty good at like going on Instagram and remembering to put a post at least
mhm.
once a week, but I'm really bad at doing like engaging posts that are questions or other that elicit responses. And that's important on certain platforms. It's also important to get to know your potential clients and audience and fans. Like I
Right.
didn't even know that one of the gals I worked with years ago was the one that was liking like every single one of my Instagram posts for my business. Like I see them like everything. I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
"Oh, what account is yours?" And they told me like, "Oh, you like everything I do."
I love
How
that.
did I
Yes, you have a
not
great
know this? I'm
follower.
so sorry. Like I would
Yes.
have been responding to you maybe a little bit more.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
but it's important. So moving past that, currently, are you getting more, and this is just an interesting question for me because I like to look at the anthropology of it too,
Sure.
and going back a little bit, people who get any female or femme oriented creative in a creative degree, less than 10% of those end up in C-suite jobs because they don't have the marketing or the business background, and they're not
Sure.
encouraged, like I said, to do it. In the fashion industry, it's even smaller. It's like 2% of women end up in C-suite jobs. And so for me, I'm interested to know, do you have women owned businesses or male owned businesses hiring you most more right now?
Primarily women owned, which is pretty amazing and is a huge part of my business is wanting to work with companies that also have like minds. And I think that it's really cool because my business is based around that sincerity and authenticity, that
Mhm.
having that connection with the brands is so important to me. And so I feel like oftentimes it's an easier sell to women owned businesses that understand the value of sharing your story and your heart, not just the products that you're selling.
Mhm.
And that's definitely the strategy that I use in my business. When you were talking about, being taken seriously dependent upon your degree, it really sparked for me the fact that when I was in college, I got a communications degree. and that was actually not in the School of Business. It was a Bachelor of Arts, and it
Mhm.
was for communication, and then journalism and English are my other disciplines. And there was the School of Business, right? And so that was a different degree, and marketing actually fell under the business side.
Mhm.
So I was more on the art side,
Mhm.
with communication. And I found that when I was getting out of school, everyone was asking, well, what kind of job can you get with a communications degree? Or there was a lot of times this underlying stereotype that communications degrees weren't like actual degrees. And,
Yep. I
you
get that
know,
with anthropology too.
yes. And I felt like it was so interesting because the marketing and business degrees that a lot of the male counterparts at school were getting were never questioned in that way about what kind of jobs they were going to land. And then I,
Right.
in turn, wound up getting a job, before I even graduated in the exact field that I studied for, and then stayed in that industry for my entire career. I've been doing communication work. And so it was just very interesting because there's always that underlying undertow, right, of people kind of discussing the difference between maybe a more male centric degree versus a female centric degree.
And that goes all the way back hundreds and hundreds of years in the gender studies of
Hmm.
occupations, right? Because what even back in like the Renaissance period, women weren't allowed to be painters. They like
Hmm.
literally weren't allowed to go to an art school. It was a man's job. And so the women that did paint, who have since been discovered, had to paint under pseudonyms
Yeah.
or were
Yeah.
never their work was never put on display. And I
Hmm.
saw one recently. That's why I'm tearing up because I was like, oh. My roommate and I were talking about it because they have a theater degree, but they're an artist. And I saw one of the women's like premier Renaissance painters on display recently, and I was like, wow, like what are the
Hmm.
chances that we'd be talking about this painter
Yes.
like a month beforehand and then she'd be in the Monet exhibit
That's
because
incredible.
because even when I was in school that wouldn't have happened.
Hmm.
Like that
Hmm.
wasn't talked about. I mean, I have a degree in anthropology with an emphasis on museum studies, and I graduated 10 years ago. And so for me, I'm like sitting there looking at that going like even then that wasn't, that was being fought for. So for it to be in a nationally touring, I think it's actually an internationally touring exhibit because it's Monet à Triomphe, that I was like, wow, like that's a big deal. Like that's a big leap. Because usually like for back then, like it wasn't considered women's work, which is funny because it's like there's a whole history of that. And I've said this on the podcast, so I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken wheel. Sorry, the sun got dimmer, so now I'm like trying to
You're
not
good.
shadow myself. I'm for the audience watching. I am so sorry. I'm in my bedroom. I'm usually in our actual like spare room that we set up for podcasts and stuff, but I didn't have my lighting come in yet that I ordered, and that's weird lighting when it's cloudy, so this is actually better. So for me it's like looking back at women's work during that period, like I said, women weren't allowed to go to art schools at all, and they taught themselves or they were taught in private by professional artists,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's how they developed their skills. And then moving forward, if you go forward in history, what was interesting about it, and specifically like art history, was that weaving was considered women's work because clothing making was considered women's work.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
the weavers from certain periods have like amazing artistic weaving, and they were like the predominant in that field. And so now historically speaking, now they're going back and showing like all the weaving that women did in certain eras and other things like that. But yeah, like being a seamstress, like I've just sewn my whole life. Like I learned from my aunt and my grandmother, and I taught myself, and I took classes over the years. I've sewn my whole life. And it's funny though because a lot of people do treat me like I'm just doing it as a hobby because they
Hmm.
had their grandmothers that sewed or something like that. And they were
Yes.
like especially when I first started my business, because I worked for my ex and I was his communications manager, for his virtual tour company, and that was great for me for a lot of reasons. I'm better with people than him, even though I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, and things like that. But he had a degree in math, a degree in business, and a degree in physics. And then so he had three bachelors. Then he also did doctoral studies in in atomic physics at Penn State that he decided not to finish because it's a long story, but it's a big political thing because they were also working with the team in France, and so they couldn't get their research on time for him to finish his doctorate on time.
Okay.
But he still finished his work, if that makes sense, and
Okay.
still like
I
being
do.
used.
Yeah.
So like everyone knew this about him because I was repping him and his company, right? So everyone knew his background, everyone knew his skill set. You know, he's a photographer, but he's a very specialized photographer. It
Mhm.
works well
Mhm.
for the way his brain thinks, right? He's
Mhm.
very good with
Mhm.
technology, and like also can do VR stuff and whatnot too. And so like because of that, no one knew what I did. And so when I
Mhm.
started my company, or no one knew anything about my background, like hardly at all. Like
Mhm.
I
Yes.
have multiple degrees, I speak multiple languages, all this other stuff. No one knew that because I was
Mhm.
always repping him. He
Mhm.
was the face of the company, and that's fine. And that was a public relations decision that we made, a
Yes.
marketing decision that we made, etc. But the thing is that when I started mine, I got a response like I was starting like an MLM. Like people were just like,
Yes.
"Oh, honey, that's so nice." Like take my hand, oh, that's so sweet. Oh, good for you. And like
Mhm.
I like 3.5 years in, and some people still not like now they're taking me seriously because
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
doing it full time.
Yeah.
But like
It takes
taking me
so long, I
seriously
feel
'cause
like, for that to
I'm
happen.
taking more custom work, and so they're actually
Mhm.
seeing because when I did like, I moved here, so, like, back in
Mhm.
the day when I did theatrical costuming and historical costuming, I don't have those costumes with me. I left them in like, the ones I made for myself or for examples, I left them in Kansas, and I don't have pictures of them because a lot of the events are, like, historical events, and people don't carry around cameras and phones, and I just
Yeah.
don't have a lot of documentation, like, I never thought to do it, so they didn't
Mhm.
see any of my work. And I haven't been a costume mistress out here. I haven't, done anything like that. And so once I finally started getting custom orders, then
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, oh,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, really? You like actually do this?" I'm like,
You have to have the proof of the work, I feel like, before people believe you, especially in a female-driven
yeah,
industry.
especially because I don't have a degree in design. And the
Yes.
thing is like I have a background in anthropology, so like I'm a hell of a researcher. So like
Mhm.
part of the reason why I'm good at doing like historical or theatrical costuming is because I will just research the fuck out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just like,
Yes.
I can do it.
Yes.
And I know a lot of techniques that a lot of people don't know because of that. But back to what you were saying, like you have to have the proof, like the proof is in the pudding, right? Like you have to have the proof. And the funny thing is like I had the proof, I just never took pictures of it. So now like
Yes.
having to like make costumes for myself and do things for myself just so people can see. And I don't like to cosplay. Like I never
Yeah.
want to like to be in the limelight. That's
Mhm.
why I that's partly why I didn't pursue like professional dance, even though I danced my whole life. Like I'm not one. I'm better backstage supporting people than on stage, right? And so because of all that, it's funny because now I'm like, "Oh, now I have to like, oh darn, I have to like go to Comic Cons all dressed up, like oh darn, I have to go to
Yes.
masquerade balls."
Yeah, it's so interesting in a female industry in general, like how you're talking about it in the arts. In my heart, I'm a writer. That's what I've always been. And in writing, for so long, only the writers like Fitzgerald and Twain and people like that were taken seriously. And any women written work was considered self-help for many, many years, right? Like if it's not a leadership expose, it's self-help, right? It's never looked at in the same light as, other fiction
So
writers would be
interesting.
looked
You
at.
need to come to the writer's tea that's monthly
Yeah.
at the Lamplighters.
Oh, I would love
It's
that.
the
Get
last
me connected.
Tuesday of the month. It's sponsored by Orca's Books and then
Okay.
Rogue Teas. So they have tea and they all just sit around and write and brainstorm for like 3 to 4 hours.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
amazing
you
and
should.
right up my
My
alley.
roommate owns a podcasting company, Erie. Have you met Erie yet?
No, I have
Ugh,
not.
you need to meet Erin and Allison.
I would
So
love that.
Allison, my other roommate Allison has a degree in creative writing, and
Oh,
then my
great.
roommate Erie, and she works as a professional copywriter, like freelance, and she also
Yeah.
is an amazing artist, so she does like freelance art illustrations for people and whatnot. And then Erie has a podcast production company named Crossroads Stations. They're actually the first interview on this podcast, the one that's released. So if you want
Yes.
to listen to
I
it,
did listen to that one.
yeah, that would be a good like explanation, but
Okay.
they do only audio dramas, and the company is and I'm the production manager now. They're geared
Nice.
towards promoting minorities and LGBTQ and like and across the board, because apparently still in like audio acting, voice acting and whatnot, there is a lot of like white people doing other characters and stuff like that. So we're like definitely trying to promote minority and female and
Yeah,
LGBTQ writers and actors and actresses.
certainly.
And
That's so
so
cool.
that's really important to us. And so I they host the writers tea because they're one of the founders of the Lamplighters, and so it's definitely like they're one of their passion projects. You should definitely you should hook up
Yes,
with
I
them.
would love to.
Yeah,
That sounds
absolutely.
amazing.
I
Yes.
will warn you that they say it devolves into talking about porn a lot because like
Okay.
some porn is like Alice is
Yes.
intrigued by porn, and some porn is very well written, and like just
Yes, it's
having to
true.
like grapple with those kinds of topics.
And some of it is very poorly written.
I've never been to one of the tea, but I've just been told that
Okay.
every
That's
week
how it
they end up
goes.
talking about porn at some point.
I love it. I love it.
So,
Oh my gosh.
FYI.
Perfect. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
you
warning.
definitely need to talk with them because, like, my dad's a writer and he actually had an opposite but similar situation because his father was an engineer and a brilliant one.
Boy.
He worked at Edwards Air Force Base until he retired. He actually was one of the engineers that surveyed and built Edwards Air Force Base, and then he worked there in the machine lab and the photo lab until he retired.
Oh
And
wow.
like he's him and my uncle were the ones that designed the first spy plane cameras in the US. Like they're
Oh,
brilliant man. But
yeah.
my dad's all artsy fartsy, right? And
Yeah.
he did not like he had one son and one daughter, and he did not like the fact that his son, who was growing up in the 60s, right? Like he was born in 48, so he's a high schooler in 60s
Yes. Yes.
and going to college in the 70s, was a writer
Yeah.
because he thought that that made him, an unmentionable word. That he thought that that
Yes.
made him gay. And
No.
so, and my dad's best friend was a professional musician. He was the drummer for Captain Beefheart. He was the first drummer for Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band. So they're like, and my dad actually wrote one of their songs and gets royalties, which I didn't
Oh,
know until
cool.
I was in like college. It was really random. One day I was there. I was like, Dad, what's this? It's like, oh, it's my royalty check. I'm like,
Mhm. Oh, that's funny.
yeah, it's funny. But so he for a lot of his life, especially being a straight man, has had people until he was an English teacher when I was born, or around the time maybe before I was born. He went back to school because he had a degree in English and a master's in poetry, and then he went back to school and got his teaching degree because he just wants something steady, and he loves teaching, and kids. And so he was a high school English teacher by one of the biggest, busiest bases in the country, which was interesting for seniors.
Oh,
So it's
really?
like make or break, these poor
Mhm.
students that have been moved around a lot. And he's a great writer, but man, he never published until like a few years back. I should really put his book on my website. I
You
mean,
should.
he's like one of those things though that he got a lot of, especially because they're religious, he's Christian, he got a lot of stuff put on him, I think his
Yes.
entire life, with all that being said. And so like it's a similar but different circumstance
Yes.
where it's like, kind of just not being taken seriously, right?
Yes, it just
Because
takes a
he's
lot.
showing emotion. This goes back into what's man's work and what's women's work.
Yeah, those societal norms that we're
He
all
could
taught.
be a teacher, but he couldn't be a touchy-feely teacher. But then the flip side of that is something interesting, whereas if someone who's femme-oriented displays emotion or creativity, it's not really taken seriously. Like you said, it's kind of self-help or self-expression,
Mhm.
but it's not taken as an art as much as males displaying it because males aren't supposed to do that, right?
Mhm.
So you look
Mhm.
at the male, and we know, like, we can chat, we can look at people we know and like just observe this. Like, I won't say names, but like just in
Yeah.
general, you can observe like the men who are artists or the men who
Yes.
are musicians that get a lot more public accolade for it, and everyone they know is like, oh, they're so sweet, they're so sensitive, like it's surprising. And
Yes.
that they have emotion, like we all have it, but that's okay. And then the
Yes.
women, they're just kind of like, oh, that's great that you do that,
Yes,
awesome, good for you.
absolutely.
Like it's not the same, it's not the same.
No,
And like I don't, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm saying it's something that's been ingrained in our culture
100%. And I
for a
feel like
long time.
that's the part about like you asked about what businesses I work with. a lot of those businesses are female oriented because they are already seen in that light, right? It's not too much of a, distance for them to think about doing their social media marketing with heart and with a lot of emotion behind it. Luckily, I do still have some bigger businesses that are not necessarily female focused, but are really trying to benefit from thinking emotionally about their brands and the nostalgia or the feelings behind their brands. And I think that bringing those together is a huge part of my work.
Mm, I'm sorry, guys. I was up in the middle of the night, like to the audience, and I'm eating a Reese's because I've not really had breakfast yet. I've had
Get
like
it?
a
I
package
love
of
that.
goldfish. So
I
I
had your
have,
goldfish yesterday.
yeah, thanks to me.
Yes,
Less
thank you.
2,000 gave out snacks.
Oh,
I
so
get
much
the good
fun.
stuff. No, so what back to what you were saying, I'm glad to hear that people are doing that, but I want, I want to stress to everyone that it's okay, male or female, to have
Yes.
emotions and to be authentic.
Yes.
Because
That's
the
the
thing
thing.
is what when women and feminists talk about toxic masculinity, we're not talking about mansplaining. We're not talking about all that. We're talking about the fact that men are seen as, people who aren't caregivers, who aren't emotional, who don't have feelings, who are basically working robots, or or angry or gruff or strong. And like it's not okay for them to be sensitive and open. And like a lot of the miscommunications I've had with men have been because they've been scared to be sensitive or open with me and honest with me about anything. I mean, I'm talking like friends, business, anything. Like, like even my dad. Like,
Yeah. No, the stereotypes are detrimental to everyone. That's the thing, is it's not just a feminist issue. It's
mhm.
an issue for anyone and everyone that's a human being that
It
has
hurts
thoughts
things
and
like single
emotions.
dads
Yes, absolutely.
immensely. I've known a lot of single dads, and I'm very supportive of them if they'll let me be. Like if I'm friends with them and everything. But like, it really hurts them when places, especially places in like I was in the Bible Belt for a long time, don't consider a man a caregiver.
Well, my dad had this issue my whole childhood. So my parents are divorced,
Mhm.
and I have loving parents that are still great friends and we're great co-parents. But my dad, had me half time. It was 50-50 split. And so I would spend a week with my dad and a week with my mom. And I remember being young and there would be commercials that came on, like a Cheerios commercial, basically showcasing that a man could feed his child breakfast and the accolades that had to come from him being able to even pour a bowl of cereal for his child. And I remember my dad being so upset talking about the fact that it isn't it isn't fair that men are not seen as equal contributors in the home, or that he wasn't my caregiver, because he was just as much as my mom was growing up.
Yeah.
They had equal duties in being my caregivers. And he had to talk to me about emotional things. I started my period at my dad's house, so he had to handle all sorts of things,
Yeah.
and handled it with care. And I feel like that it's almost just as detrimental to men that are in that same boat.
Yeah, so when I want to educate people, I want to educate like because eventually this will turn into a nonprofit.
Hmm.
I have at least one business that's going to sponsor the podcast and help me get the nonprofit going, but it will
Great.
turn into a nonprofit. But it will turn into a nonprofit to give community and events to people who are marginalized
Hmm.
and to give a place for them to gain exposure, right, through interviews and through other stuff, like I don't know, art exhibits or stuff.
Hmm.
And then also to be able to educate people in general about like about business, about everything, and like kind of fill in the gaps to help people with their careers and to help people kind of get away from this misconception. And so like a
Yes.
lot of the interviews that I'm doing are I want to just hear like things like what you just said, like this is important to your creative process though, because your dad was there for you emotionally. It
Yes.
sounds like he was very
100%.
supportive of you and like and encouraging you to pursue your passions and to do what you want, not just to go like get a business degree. Like,
No. No,
yeah.
that's 100% true. Both of my parents, my mom, she wrote for the Troopers magazine here, and she wrote poetry her whole life. And my dad also writes articles. He actually works for the government and he loves to write as well. And so he's been able to even take his job that is, pretty technical
Mhm.
and has been able to find a way to have that passion as an outlet where he writes a monthly article for their newsletters and is all about talking about his love of cooking and his love of hosting people in his home. And just, I think that having parents that were really intentional about raising me to embrace all sides of myself, believe that I was a leader as a woman from a young age, believe in my passions and pursuing those passions for a career, made all the difference for me.
Yeah, what's it when people say, like, "She's not bossy, she's just a leader?" Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I was an emotional kid, and I still am an emotional woman. I'm someone that believes that that's a superpower rather than it being, a negative.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, have you ever listened to the Women of Impact, podcasts?
No, I haven't.
So
Women
it's
of
the
impact.
owner of Quest Fitness, Lisa
Oh,
Yalu. Yeah. So she has a podcast called Women of Impact, and she interviews
great.
women of impact.
I
And
love
that's
that.
something that she always says is like she asks every guest, "What is your superpower?"
Yeah, that's 100% what I would say mine is being able to share your emotions. That vulnerability is what leads to all of us having connection. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter your gender or what your profession is. That is something that unites us as humans.
For me, I really like to learn and continue learning, continue updating, my education and whatnot. And something that I've been hyper focusing on as far as like learning in the past year or so. I've read a lot of books, but
Hmm.
in the past and during the
Yeah.
pandemic, um, but in the past year or so has been like how to respond to emotional bids, how to recognize them, how to recognize body language, face language, facial expressions, micro
Yes.
expressions, vocal intonations, word choice, and just generally communicate better because you wouldn't know it now because I'm well adjusted, but I'm extremely shy. And
Oh, really?
like,
Mhm.
yeah, like I'm a nervous talker kind of shy. Like you get me one on one and I'm like nervous, I'll just
I love that.
because I learned to deflect my feelings by
Hmm.
talking because I can make people
Yes.
laugh. But then it
Oh, perfect.
backfires when, I'm like on a date or something and they're like, "That's too much. Oh my God. I'm like, "I'm sorry."
I love that. No, I'm a talker too, so I totally get it.
Yeah, but I'm really shy. Like growing up, even in high school, I couldn't make eye contact with people. I had to learn how to do it all. And like, because one of the things that's interesting for women, especially women who are shy, is that
Hmm.
if you aren't able to make that eye contact and make certain, and you like fidget and do things,
Hmm.
seen as untrustworthy. Like a
Yes.
lot of the same signs for nervousness and anxiousness, like social anxiety, are also
Hmm.
signs that people look for lying and manipulation. And so if they don't know you and you're talking too much or you're like me, I'm an over explainer
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I can also overshare because I'm
Hmm.
nervous. And so I'm like
Yes.
trying to build rapport, but I go up my rapport levels too quickly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if I overexpose myself, so to speak, then I am seen as like trying to manipulate them into like giving me information or like and you like a mean girl,
Yeah.
like that's
You're
what I
like,
always
no.
think. Like yesterday I almost wore pink.
Oh, it was a Wednesday. Come
It was a
on.
Wednesday. I was like thinking in the back of my brain, I didn't want you guys to be insulted though, but I almost walked by the TYP table and was like, "Are you wearing pink?" And
You should
it
have.
was
We would
all
have loved
women.
it.
I was like, on Wednesdays we wear pink, but I didn't want to like insinuate something shouldn't
No,
be.
it would have been perfect. I had pink
You
on.
guys look fire. You guys look very nice, but like Jessica
Oh.
probably would have been like, "Is she serious?" Like,
No, she would have loved it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's the thing is connecting with women too in the community has been really powerful. Speaking about TYP, the Thurston Young Professionals, I feel really lucky to be on that committee because there are a lot of really amazing female leaders on the committee that are also, really passionate about getting our voices heard and, helping to inspire other women in the community to get involved.
I've always been on the fence about doing it. I've been
Really?
asked several times, and
Yes.
I'm not currently a chamber member, so I
Oh, okay.
I didn't join the chamber because I'm not sure if I'm taking like, with the long-term plans of my business, I'm not sure if I'm taking everything online exclusively
Mhm.
or not, and so it's kinda like, I don't know if I wanna, like, bog myself down with the chamber membership and then feel forced to, like, be more active here and, like, limit my growth elsewhere, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, and I told Elizabeth, like, nicely, like, "I just don't know if this is my audience yet," but,
Mhm.
like, I have been, like, asked and encouraged several like, probably every yeah, because we used to be chamber members with my ex's business, Centerless
Mhm.
Imagery, and, like, then I was definitely asked, like I'm, like, always like, "Great, another thing for Laurel to do, yay."
Yes, it is, but I will say, like, my chamber membership, is a pretty minimal for me, pretty minimal, like, financial obligation, and I've gotten a huge amount of encouragement and growth and being able to network with people in the community, and I know you're very aware of that, coming to all of the meetings and, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, especially because working for the fair, a lot of my clients are out of Pierce and King County, and so trying to tap into the local market. I'm originally from Shelton. I grew
Oh,
up here. I went to school on Tumwater Hill and, left to go to college and then landed in Pierce County for my career. And then my husband and I made the choice to move back closer to family last year around the exact same time that I chose to open my business. And I just want to get back connected with this local Thurston community. And it's been really exciting to kind of see those relationships flourish.
even if I grow my business elsewhere,
Hmm.
I do feel like this is a good foundational place for me, like, this business community is one of the first that I've seen really support, like, new
Hmm.
businesses and small businesses a lot. Because I lived in Joplin, Missouri, and then
Hmm.
Wichita, Kansas, and both places there I freelanced and did things. I was gonna start a business in Wichita, and I came out here because my brother's in Olympia and for, other reasons, like,
Hmm.
when I was looking at continuing my education at master's level, the schools out here have better options.
Hmm.
I have yeah, and then so I was like, well, I can go out here, and then I started my business here, and I didn't really tap into all the resources because I was just doing it on the side to Phil's
Hmm.
business, and
Hmm.
so now that I'm full time, and I'm like, oh, I was like I was limiting myself because I can only handle so much work at once.
Yes,
And so I
absolutely.
don't advertise. All my business right now is referral or like people find me on Google, but I don't like advertise.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
yesterday was one of the first times I really networked.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I get swamped. Like when
Yes.
I do, I'm like deluged in clients, and then they're all mad when I tell them it's gonna be like a month because it's just me.
Yes.
So
No, I
it's
totally
like
get that.
deadline them and stuff, and it's a little crazy. And so I just took on an apprentice, so now I can advertise and like
Oh, great.
really start like looking at how to make that move forward. Even if it's like a 6-month apprenticeship, it will help me grow my business in the areas I
Mhm.
want to because I'm not going to just stay in sewing, like it's not that. Like I have a full plan to expand and grow and
Great.
like start multiple companies. And so I have to take that as time allows. And so
Yes.
it will help me focus and do more things. But so when I look at joining like a leadership team, it's like I know it will help me. I know it'll help me grow. I know it will help
Yes.
people know who I am. But
Yeah, can you do it? What's the bandwidth? You have to prioritize.
I was working at one point I was working 4 jobs. Oh, it was 5 jobs. At one point I was working 5 jobs. have a lot of bandwidth, but I
Yeah.
don't want to be building other people's businesses
Yes.
anymore.
Yes. That makes sense. No, and I'm with you. That's why I opened my own business, and that's why, like, this podcast is a great opportunity for me to give some insight into what I do and hopefully help other people grow their own business. I know that you mentioned, what are some tips and tricks, right, for
Mhm.
social media for femme-based businesses. And my number one tip for people is to show your heart, to make sure that those posts are actually speaking into the heart of your business and who you are as an owner of your business. You had mentioned, posting weekly. Consistency is key. I think that making sure that everyone is posting consistently, and if you're that doesn't mean you have to post every day. That's what a lot of my clients are confused by. They think, okay, I have to do this 7 days a week. I have to do 12 stories a day. And that's not the case. What you need to do is come up with a posting schedule that allows you to post this consistent amount. So let's say you're going to post 3 times a week. That's what I would say is a great goal for people to start with. Make sure you're posting every week, 3 times a week. that's how the algorithm starts to benefit you.
Yeah, and so when you're talking, I know a lot of people think like Facebook, Instagram, but
Hmm.
I also, because of my background with doing virtual tours, we also did manage Google Business profiles, and
Yep.
we posted for clients on social media. And
Hmm.
so I also want to add to that that
Hmm.
on Google.
Yes.
It's extremely important to do a post on your Google My Business profile at least once a week,
Hmm.
and the more you do it, it will actually bump you in
Yeah.
SEO.
Yeah.
So that is one where you could post daily,
Hmm.
and it would be great. But for, like you said, for Instagram and whatnot, you can actually look, you can find charts that tell you what kind of business you have, and when's the best time for your type of business to post, and what days of the week are active. And you can go back on your analytics, and I'm sure Symone could get way more in depth with this than me, and look and see when people are actually looking at your
Yeah.
posts, and then
Yeah.
post more at those times and days. And like, I know, for instance, my business is closed Sunday, Monday, so I can be open on Saturday. But oh my God, I get all of my calls on Mondays.
Yes.
No one
Yes.
cares. No one looks. They all call me Monday. So
Yes.
I have to just be aware that I'm going to get business calls on Mondays no matter what I do. And when I go back and I have my Google, my business profile set up to track the calls through
Hmm.
the profile that are made through the profile. And so when I go back and look, yeah, sure enough, it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is when I get all my calls.
Yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
never the weekend, which I thought it would be, because a lot of clients want to work on the week, or like
Yes.
want me to meet them on the weekend. But oh no, 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 it's Mondays. It's my day off. Yay.
And that's the thing, like learning what your specific audience wants. And that's where those analytic and insights come in handy. Looking at the reporting, seeing when people are interacting with your content most is so important. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't post every day. That's a great goal if you want to. But I think a lot of businesses see that and then think, okay, it's all or nothing. And I don't believe that that is the case. In
Right.
fact, I know it isn't. You can grow your business even just posting 3 times a week, as long as you're doing it consistently and with a strategy in mind.
Yeah, and something else I want to say, because you do have a background in marketing and all this other stuff, is that having a consistent color scheme, which I'm
Yes.
trying to get better at, matters. I have noticed, and like, I tend to want to do a certain color for my business. Let's just say I want to do like a baby pink, right, as my
Sure.
accent color. The problem is, like, I'll do seasonal posts, and sometimes I'll have like a different background or border because it's seasonal. And I've noticed that the ones that get the most interaction, responses like clicks, click
Yeah.
throughs, etc., are actually green.
Perfect. Well, and
That's
then you're
something for
learning.
your business, like, that's
Yes.
something that I had to, like, pay attention to. So now it's like, oh, well, when I want to post to get attention, if I put up
Yes.
green, pink gets the second most, but like if I
Mhm.
put up like a pale green, like a pastel green, it's gonna get the most attention. And that's
Yes.
so funny. It's been so true on Instagram, especially. And I don't know why.
Well, I'm not sure. I know that branding colors, green is supposed to be a very relaxing tone, so
Mhm.
maybe people are loving that. But I think, yeah, being branded with your content, but then also being adjustable, right? Like knowing that you're going to have to pivot based on what your audience responds to. The fact that you pay attention to that is the number one goal, right? In business is for us to see what people respond to and then pivot your business to then do like-minded content.
Yeah, it's just so funny. And like, you can look back and see if the videos or like what types of posts get more interaction. So I'm glad that you're willing to like talk a little bit about this and like let people know that you can go in a lot more depth of it. So guys, call her if you need her.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely. Give me a
please,
call.
guys and gals, all people. But yeah, it's so funny because I think about it and I'm like, yeah, man, like I need to pay more attention to that, not less. Like, I'm at the point where like when I get swamped, I can't handle even posting daily. Like, I'll forget. And so I'm like, or
And
posting.
that's where someone like me, a content
Yeah,
creator, comes in,
uh-huh.
right? Is
Yep.
that
And
outsourcing.
yeah, exactly. And I have this discussion a lot as a business owner. The number one thing that makes small businesses fail is refusing to outsource.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. Like right now, I met someone yesterday. I want some tax help. I need some help with my QuickBooks. Those are things that I am learning and I can do. But is that where my talents lie? It's not, right? And so for me, let's outsource those things that first of all don't bring me joy in the business and also are not helping me to make more money. I am
Yep.
good at networking. I'm good at talking about the products. I'm good at writing. I'm good at creating the content. I want to focus my energy and attention on building those parts of the business and let someone else handle, the parts that you're not so good at.
Yeah, and I need to start doing that too. And like getting consistent income and consistent clientels will help with that, and for everybody, for everyone. So like I know people that are just starting out in a business, in a creative business. I know people that are well established in a creative
Mhm.
business, and like the resounding feedback is you need to outsource what you're not good at. Like even if you
Yes.
can do it, like even if you think you're good at it, like fucking outsource it. Like if it's not your top three or 4
Yep.
things that you'd like to do, outsource it. And so
Yep.
that's like where I'm at because like when I first opened, when my first year in business, I did have an intern, but she moved away. And
Hmm.
then it was really hard for me to pick up clients because I had to like finish that work and I didn't have time to advertise and like blah blah blah. So when things slowed down
Yeah.
after wedding season, it was hard. And now I have an intern going into my slow season, but that
Hmm.
means like over the winter, I usually get a lot of custom work. And so that means
Yes.
that I can like take the custom work and then also still take the alterations and not be limiting myself. And so it's like learning how to allocate your time management and allocate your resources to outsource what you don't need. Like
Yes, and
what
creating those boundaries for yourself. I feel like that is something as a small business owner that is maybe the most difficult part is figuring out the boundaries of, what you're going to do and then what you're not going to do, right? That's just as important
and
as
also
what
who
you
you're
are going to
gonna
do.
spend time with and who you're not gonna spend time with. As a business owner that doesn't have any employees, I really have to time manage and boundary my time and watch my circle. And like
Yes.
I love like what some people I follow in business coaching what they say is if you don't know who your top 5 people are influencing you, then you better figure it out first, like, as quickly as possible, because that is something that you need to manage very clearly, and you
Yes.
can't and, like, it's not just for your mental sake, it's not just for your emotional state, it's also for your success. You
Yeah,
have
your
to make sure
business.
that you have that inner circle, like,
Oh,
laid
nailed
out
it.
and, like, clear boundaries around it, because otherwise you're gonna anyone can influence you, and that's dangerous. And, like,
Exactly.
I've had to lay down the law a few times as I've grown last year and this year and moved away from some things and started new things, is, like, telling people, like, clearly, I don't pull my punches. I'm nice, I try to be kind about it, sometimes I'm not,
Yes, of
but
course. There's a respectful way to communicate that.
telling people clearly, like, "I don't want anything to do with you, I'm sorry, like,
Yes.
you're not good for my mental state or you're not good for my business or you're not good for my reputation, whatever the case may be. And it sucks like research shows that people rejecting people feel as much pain as the person as the rejectee, like the rejector.
Yes. Yes, I believe that, if not more so.
And for women, I think it's worse. Like
Yeah, exactly.
we're more emotionally tuned, we're more emotionally trained. So we do see like that emotional response more in people because we're more receptive to it ourselves. And so we recognize it. I'm like, oh, that's hard. That's hard to say, like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't spend time with you anymore. I'm sorry, I want nothing to do with you. Like you're
I'm
valuable
an Enneagram
the whole
2, and let me tell you, that is very hard for me. Being a helper, it's hard to say no or to tell someone, like, that's not something I'm comfortable with, or this relationship is something I no longer serves me and that I'm willing to have. It's so hard, but also I think just as maybe more important for people that those boundaries are difficult to set. And in your business specifically, that's something when I went into business, I thought a lot about was like, how do I set this up to be a company that facilitates growth and joy in my everyday life, right? And that comes from setting boundaries.
Have you ever had to fire clients?
I have actually had to fire one client.
Mm.
Yes, which was difficult. Yeah, it was a really difficult time, but also it allowed me, you know, not just firing a client, but also realizing like for a while there, I was doing some agency work.
Ah.
And, that was fun in the beginning. It gave me a lot of stability when I first started my business to contract and do agency work. But then I realized that a lot of what I was doing was similar to how I felt when I worked for other people still. And leaving and starting my own company was about building a business for myself and not building, I mean, helping other people build their business too. But I had to realize that that wasn't bringing me joy anymore to work for these agencies and take that leap of faith to say, I just want my own clients because I want to create really robust relationships with these clients. And when you're working with an agency, there's a barrier between you and the actual client, right? You're working with the agency.
Yeah.
And that barrier is where I found a lot of friction. And so I decided to say, I'm no longer going to do agency work. I'm just going to do work that's direct to the consumer.
As someone who subcontracted quite a few people, like other companies for centerless imagery, I was their project manager and I was the boundary between the clients and the people. And
Hmm.
sometimes it was really nice to be that boundary because the people were being like the people who subcontracted with were being unprofessional, but sometimes it was
Yes.
really difficult. And like I did have some people reach out to me and say, "Hey, do you mind if I just contact them directly?" And it's like, "Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a secret that you're working for us. Like we're just
Yes. Yes.
facilitating this. Like go ahead." But then other agencies or places want to whitewash you, and
Yes.
like we had been subcontracted a lot under whitewashing, and
Hmm.
so that made it difficult because we'd have to be like, you just have to contact them with questions. We can't get a hold of them, like it made it hard.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I've been on both sides of that. And yeah, I agree with you. It's hard when you don't find a joy in what you're doing. Like there are times where I'm like, I really don't want to do this sewing. Like this is
Hmm.
boring as fuck for me because it's pant stems again or something.
Yes.
Then there's
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, but I still need to eat and it still allows
Yes.
me to do the
Yes.
sewing that I want to do, and it still allows me to grow relationships with these clients. And like I altered 12 dresses for a lady. Well, now she wants custom work because I altered 12 dresses for her. Like, and they were all
That's the perspective though,
yeah,
right?
and
Is
so
that
you have
shift.
to build that
Yeah.
clientele, and you have to not be afraid. Like I have major imposter syndrome when it comes to
Mhm.
sewing. A lot of reasons, but mostly because people consistently point out that I don't have a degree in it. And so it's one of those things where it's like, honey, you can hand me a picture and I can make it. Like I
Mhm.
just got a client yesterday and I'm super excited about that. I'll come back to it, but I got a client yesterday because of that. And so it's one of those things that I have to emphasize to people like experience doesn't equal a degree. A degree doesn't mean that they have any experience in the field. They can go get a
No.
degree without interning, without doing anything.
Yes.
Like you didn't do that. I'm glad to hear that you didn't do that. But with my anthropology degree, my school at the time didn't have a field school. So I
Yeah.
couldn't get a job when I got out of school in archaeology because I had no field school. I still, to be a field archaeologist, or a research archaeologist would have to go pay to go to a field school, which is much harder when you're no longer in school because a lot of
Yeah.
field schools only take students. And
Yes.
so, for me, even though I did work as an archaeologist when I was in school, because I didn't have a field school,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's like this weird caveat. And
Yes.
archaeology gets the same thing. So my background is theology. I have a degree in theology.
Wow.
I'm no longer a religious person, but I do have a degree in
Mhm.
theology. I have a degree in anthropology, a bachelor's, which my minors were dance and French. I've danced my whole life. I always want to be an instructor. At some point, I might be able to teach, but now I have a bad back,
Amazing.
so I have to find like a student that can teach with me, like
Mhm. Mhm.
exhibit A, like.
Yes.
And then I've been talking with Louise Shimamoto about that.
Yes.
Also, uh, then my second bachelor's, because I wanted to go into geoarchaeology. At the time, I didn't have a bad back, so I could hike and do all the stuff that would be required for field work. Was in a bachelor's of science in geology, not liberal arts, because even though anthropology and other schools have a bachelor's of science option, my school didn't.
Mm.
And so, and geology had a field camp. And then
Okay.
I ended up not finishing that degree, and I could still, but for me, it was so funny because I would go from like this is like back to the liberal arts, like anthropology, what you're talking about, having a communications liberal arts degree. Everyone in the geology department thought that the anthropology department was
Yes.
because they were liberal arts.
Yes, exactly.
Psychology you have to do, and like even the instructors in the department were soliciting the school to make it a science degree or to make certain things required, like statistics and stuff required, because
Yes.
and to make geology required, because in anthropology, if I'm out doing field work, like I did a lot of lithics analysis, which is
Yeah.
analysis. I did 3.5 years of my 4-year degree was volunteering doing lithics analysis, finding the origins of lithics and finding the origins of clay pottery. And so like and that's a lot of geology. And
Yeah.
and and it's just so funny because like we were seen as jokes by the geology department, and because we were like the students in the geology department would make fun of the anthropology department. And so when I
Yes.
bat and there were several of us that went for a double bachelor's or
Hmm.
even like went for a master's in geology after anthropology. And so when I went into the geology department, everyone's like, oh, now you're doing a real degree, like you have a science
Yeah,
degree.
that real degree thing, right, is just so funny to me.
And I didn't get scholarships in the anthropology department because it was a liberal arts degree, and I'm a single female that happens to be light skinned, even though I'm mixed. I never put on any of my paperwork.
Hmm.
So who happens to be light skinned, who who was getting a liberal arts degree. So I didn't, especially in the Bible Belt, because I didn't have kids. I didn't get any scholarships. But when I
Yes,
went into
yes.
the geology degree, because I was a woman in the sciences,
You did.
I got scholarships. Like,
Yeah, of
oh, I
course.
hate you guys. Like, so gendered biased. And so when I
Yes.
came out here, I was like, well, I can either finish my geology degree in a more liberal place where people are going to
Hmm.
take it seriously, or I could go into a master's in museum work, which is what I was looking at doing more so. But there's a lot more options for schools out here. Like, every single school out here is good at anthropology and geology. Like,
Yes, yes.
so weird. Washington is just like a hot center for that. So that's why I came out here. It's like, if I ever continue my education, this is a better location anyway.
It's
But
a great place for it.
yeah. But like what I'd like to emphasize in that story is the idea that one degree is not better than another, because you know what? I use my anthropology degree to research and do things, but I'm not using either one of those right now to run my business.
Yes, yes.
I'm
Exactly.
like I learned more about communication, how people work and how society works, and I can feed that into what I'm doing with my business, and it helps me understand things like marketing, but I'm not doing either. So when I get imposter syndrome, I also have to remind myself that I really am using my degree. A lot of people don't know, for instance, that the FBI, most of the analysts that they hire are anthropologists. They look for a degree
Yes.
in anthropology. And like most of the government advisors in any agency, when they're talking about doing cultural advising, they're all anthropologists. Like they're not, it's a degree that's really misunderstood because it
Yes.
has linguistics, archaeology, cultural anthropology, and biological anthropology. So anyone who does forensics has a biological anthropology degree. That's one of the things my department actually specialized in. And we had flesh-eating beetles and everything.
Oh,
Like,
how cool.
so like like it's a really misunderstood degree, and I feel like communications is the same way, where it's a really
Very similar.
degree. And like but you can do a lot of government contracting work, you can do a lot of work behind the scenes that no one knows, that it's like a communications degree that gets you there. And
Well,
so
and I think that any job needs that communications degree. My husband and I both have the same degree. We met in college and we both have communications degrees. And he went a much more business centric route. I went public relations and then in turn social media contracting, but he has managed people his whole career. And I think no matter what industry you're in, it's communication is going to be key, right?
yeah, and I think it's really important for me to acknowledge, like at this point, that like I might have learned how to communicate better with people, but I am not like a master communicator. Like
No.
I would rather be like sitting in the background, people watching. Like,
Yes, you learn though, and that's the thing I feel like people talk about with college, and especially when you're getting your bachelor's, is that it's all about critical thinking, right? If you get a degree, you've learned how to critically think, and that is what most employers are looking for, right? That's the thing that comes in handy with my business. That's the way that you're able to run your business, is the fact that we have those critical thinking skills. I do not in any way, shape, or form believe that a degree um, means that you have those skills, but I do think that it was helpful for me in my career to have some of that to fall back on. But also, your experience in the field that you want to be in is far more valuable than any degree is ever going to
yeah,
be.
like my whole I've been doing theater work for 20 years, and I include high school in that.
Hmm.
But like professionally speaking, I'm a card carrying IATSE member, like
Hmm.
professionally speaking, I can go run spotlight, run sound, mix a recording, do what I've done, pyrotechnics, I've done everything you can imagine, professional wardrobe, professional changing, like anything you can imagine, I've done it in that field. And
Hmm.
like as a theater tech,
Hmm.
a technical theater person, and as a stagehand is what a lot of people would call it for like concerts or just regular events. Done it all, and I can tell you like it's in that field, it's always like who has the most experience. It doesn't depend on a degree. Like it's real old school in the sense that like if a woman comes in and she has far more experience than a man in the room, then she's fucking charged. Like
Yeah,
I
good for
know
her.
I know women riggers that are flown all over the country to rig, and
Yeah,
sometimes out of the states to rig because they're head riggers, and that
yeah,
is what they do, and that is extremely dangerous and extremely important.
yes,
You know, and
yes.
so it's so interesting to me when I come from that background and like the men who knew that the women could like who knew the women that could do certain things, they were just as defensive and like vicious of us when like traveling teams were coming through. It's like, no, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
You better listen to her. And it's so funny because then I come into like a different world, like the business world, where it's still very man centric and very like egocentric too. And like
Male dominated for
I
sure.
think it's weird that like people think that to be an entrepreneur you have to have a big ego, but whatever. Um, like, I
I
get
don't.
that from some people, like, oh, you must be a strong woman. I'm like, well, I mean, I
No, you
guess.
just, yeah, found your passion and you're following it. I don't, if that's considered strong as a woman, I don't know.
Well, the funniest thing to me is that trying to do like online dating, which I've never done before in my life, but because of the pandemic and everything,
Yes,
I was
yes.
like, oh, I might as well try it. I started in like April this year, and one of the biggest things I've gotten were men trying to tell me how to run my business, like within a day of talking to me.
Oh my god, yeah. Don't you love that? Oh my gosh, yeah.
Do you
Instant
think that
no.
I can give them career advice within a day of talking to them?
Go ahead and try and see how that works
I
for you.
should
I'd
start
love
screen capturing
experiment.
these. It's hilarious. It's like when I first signed up for, I tried Tinder because I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, I'll try Tinder. And when I first signed up for Tinder, I had like I don't even dozens of men with either tech or business degrees that worked up in Seattle. Like as soon as they heard that I had a business, try to tell me, "Oh, what do you do for your business? How many employees do you have? Well, have you thought this? Have you thought that?" Like same day of meeting them, like same day of like
No.
first conversation, trying to tell me how to run my fucking business. And like I
Yeah.
would just egg them on because I'm like, well, I guess this is free advice, sure. like
Yeah, I
just
guess.
like
I don't know if that's the
answer the
advice you
questions
want, but
until I got bored and then block them.
yes,
But,
yes.
like, really, like, it's so mind-boggling that, like, men are seen in that light that they should be giving advice to a female that they don't even know, and they have
That's
nothing to do with my industry at all.
Yes, that's why we need more women in business for us to get our advice from, right? That's why have this podcast so that we can talk to people, like-minded people opening businesses. Like, we don't need your Tinder advice,
But then
sir.
the funnier part is, like, the few men that I actually have dated,
Hmm.
like, all of them have been, like, the opposite end where it's even if they have a business, like, I've seen a couple of different guys who are independent business owners, and, like, even if they have a business, they're like they just don't wanna interfere. Like, they're just like, "It's okay." They don't even ask questions about my business.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
they want
about
to know
their
about you.
business.
Yes, yes. Oh
It's
my
so
gosh.
weird how, like, if they haven't met me, they feel like they're obligated to try to, like, prove themselves by giving me business advice, but if they do know me, then they're just like, "Oh, well, just let me tell you about my business then." Like,
Yeah.
they have no interest in my business. It's, like, so bizarre. I think that the woman's role as a supportive emotional support to men around them is so difficult. Like, sometimes I just am like, "I don't wanna be around men." Like, one roommate's non-binary, one roommate's bi, and, like, one roommate's non-binary but likes women, one roommate's bi, and I'm the only straight one in the house, and I'm just like, sometimes I just don't wanna be around men. Because of all of the social conditioning that they feel like they need a woman that they have to take care of and that but that at the same time that woman needs to be a support to them, like it's not that they could be a support to me.
Well, I will tell you there are ones out there that will be. I was lucky enough to find a man that was my fully supportive of starting my own business and is literally the backbone of helping me do this. But yes, it is so hard, and I feel like that conditioning is so hard to unlearn. But I'm lucky that he was a man interested in emotional intelligence. I mean, we got the same degree, and I think that says a lot about who
Yeah,
he is.
it's so funny. Like now that I'm like embracing like kind of being a feminist more, I'm like, oh, fuck the man just a little. I'm like, okay, well, or fuck men just a little. Okay, well, maybe I should actually look into like all the women's business resources.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh.
Because I
That's
haven't
so
been
funny.
like I have just
Yep.
I've never taken advantage of any women's business resource, like no grants, no anything, like not applied for
Yes.
anything, not gotten any kind of because anytime I went to someplace like the EDC, they didn't take me seriously, so they would just try to sell me a class. And it's like
Mhm.
it turns
Yeah.
out that most of what they have there is free. Or and I didn't know
Mhm.
that talking to them like when I started a few years back because they knew me as the communications manager for my ex's business.
Yeah, yeah, that
And so
makes
it's
sense.
funny because now that it's like past the pandemic and people are seeing me again, they're like, "Oh, you do this full time now? Oh my, like you are actually serious." And now people are like trying to give me resources and like trying to be like, "Oh, keep going." Like,
Yes, it's so amazing though to have that switch when you go out on your own and people start to take you seriously. I feel like that is so empowering as a business
yeah,
owner to
so it's
have.
nice. It's nice to feel like people are taking me seriously. I still feel like some people, in particular, some men I know, are not
Mhm.
taking me seriously. But at the same time, now it's like I went full time in April. About the same time I started dating, ironically enough. Went full time in April, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to start looking at the women resources and all the women I know because it's like the men I know are hit and miss.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like you have more you can talk to and a lot of similar experiences, especially with women in business. It's very cool. I feel like that has been a huge part of starting my own businesses, starting to lean into those communities as well.
Mm. And let me just say, I'm a huge ally of the LGBTQ plus community, and they have been
Yes.
relentlessly supportive of
I
me.
love that. That's amazing. That's so
Like
cool, and it sounds like you're surrounded by some people that are pretty influential in that community as well.
around here, yeah, and also like I'm involved. Like I know the people who run Seattle Pride Fashion Week. They had their first Fashion Week this year. They're hoping to
Oh,
make it
cool.
international, hopefully by next year. And so they do like fundraisers throughout the year. So I went to a masquerade last Saturday. I got a
Oh, I saw the pictures.
party and had like 3 gay boys have to help carry me to my car because they didn't know I had a migraine, and that was why I was throwing up because they was just,
Oh
"Oh,
my
she's drunk."
gosh.
Like, no.
I
It
just
was
have a migraine.
bad. We'll just put that on documentation on the website.
Yes.
I was not that drunk. I was drunk, but I had a migraine. Not good. But it was funny because it was like I remember them helping me, and I remember them being like, "Oh, she's just a little sloppy. We all get that way, dear." And they're like so supportive and so sweet, and message me
Oh,
afterwards and be like, "I'm
yeah.
okay. I'm sorry." Like,
Yes.
but it's like if you can't be around people where you can have something horrific like a migraine happen, and they're like concerned about you, and
Supportive,
they
yeah.
think that you're a burden, then don't be
Yeah.
around those people at all.
Nope,
Like,
nope,
uh-uh,
just
no.
goes back to the people you surround yourself with, right?
Mhm. If you don't know your circle of 5, fucking learn it, and learn it quick.
I am, very happy to say that the people that are around me, I wanna be more like every single day. So,
That's always good. That's what, like,
it took a while. It took a while to get there, though. It took a lot of boundary setting to now have a curated group of people that I am like, "I will be just fine if these are the people with me the rest of my life."
so is it about a year since you've been in business for yourself?
Yeah, so I actually opened, the business in February. So, it will be a year, February 2022. I started the last November actually, doing freelance on the side. So it's been about a year where this transition has occurred.
Yeah, and if you had like one word of advice for someone that wants to have their own business, even if it's just freelance work, do you have like one word of advice or a general,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know, like
think
little quip about it?
yeah, I think the number one piece of advice that I would give people is just to find your passions and then do the thing you love every day. I feel like when you're doing something you're passionate about, it's something that comes naturally and people gravitate towards you with it and believe that you are the authority on that. I feel like the imposter syndrome is difficult for everyone and anyone, right? That's starting a business, and specifically for women or femme oriented people. And I think that if you just stand in that power of knowing that it's something you're passionate about and that you're good at and that you have the work ethic to, follow up on learning the things that maybe you need to learn more about, you can't really fail.
Nice. That's great advice. Thank you. Yeah, my current mantra is I am enough. Like when I'm
Yes.
meditating, so I'm enough. I'm enough the way I am. I'm enough even if I'm a little sloppy. I'm
No,
enough even if I'm
you are. I
confused
know.
or like missing a day or behind on a project. Like I'm enough. That's
You
how it
are.
is. That's how it should be. So thank you so much for giving me that advice and giving our audience that advice. And like I really think it's important. But we're probably close to wrapping up. So if there's any other things you'd like to say, feel free. And then we'll just get your social media profiles.
Absolutely. What you were saying about manifesting, that is right now, I'm saying the things that are meant for me are coming for me. And I feel like if we can all just put that energy out, hopefully some good things are coming towards us from the universe soon. But I'm just grateful to have been on the podcast and speak to all of you. It's been a blast.
Perfect. And what's your social media profile so we can all follow
Yes.
you?
So on Instagram, it's Simone_Salvino. And then on Facebook, it's also Simone Salvino. If you look up Sincerely Simone, it will also pop up.
Perfect. Great. So thank you so much. And in the description below there'll be the links to Simone's stuff and also like if your audio it will be in that description on the podcast below. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Other Creatives and hopefully you'll catch us another time.
Thank you so much, Laurel.
Yeah, you're welcome.